Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scouts. We are again turning our attentions to FanTeam. I'm joined with Josh, and Josh, you had a bit of a nightmare before this stream, didn't you? Because apparently you spilt tea all over your desk.
Yeah, I literally lobbed half my mug all over the desk, so I had to quickly go get a new one and do a clean-up job. But we're good now, mate.
Yep, and for everyone saying, it's just me, messing things up, technical side, no sound, no video, which, yes, happens quite regularly. I can't help it if Josh just chucks his tea all over himself. That's out of my control. But how are you, Josh? You doing all right? FanTeam, another FanTeam video. Should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm ready to go, mate. I'm feeling good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Got a week off next week, so I can relax and make a million drafts. I say make a million drafts on FPL, but I'm finding it really hard to go against template teams, and I'm not making as many changes as I have done in previous years. I really want to see some big moves. Kane moving, Haaland going to Chelsea, Sancho getting added to the game. That's the kind of thing I think we need to spice things up a little bit.
It's always the knock-on effect, isn't it? Once one transfer happens, you tend to see 5 or 6 that are all to do with the funds moving around. So yeah, I'm excited for the daisy chain to start, hopefully.
Yep, absolutely. So we are. This is part 2 of our 2-part FanTeam. I say series, mini series within a series. We're going to be looking at all the teams and all the players without who are playing in the Premier League next year. So all the players that are added to FanTeam, Josh and I will be talking about. We're looking at defenders, midfielders, attackers, trying to find some bargains, looking at the premium picks, all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't watched the first part, then you can go back and watch that now. If you have watched the first part, then stick around and we'll do the next 10 teams. So
sounds good, mate.
Sounds good. Yeah. So we got down to Leicester last time. So we're gonna kick straight off with Liverpool. So straight into, arguably one of the 2 biggest teams with the most options for us to consider, some of the most expensive prices as well. So in defence, we've got Alisson there at 6, and then we've got Trent there at 7.5, Robertson at 7, Van Dijk at 6. So Van Dijk, is he 6.5 in FPL? So a little bit cheaper for him, but Trent and Robertson both the same price. And then you've got Konaté at 5.5, Gomez at 5. So who do you think is going to start out of those 2? First of all, do you think Konaté is going to come straight in?
I can't say I've looked too much into it. I heard on 2 podcasts that Konaté is going to start, so I'm going to go with that for now. But yeah, I think Gomez against Konaté is pretty close for the second centre-back slot. I don't think Nat Phillips gets a look in, which is quite upsetting for him because he played really well at the end of last season. But I don't think he's going to get a look in. And then you've even got Matip still knocking around as well, but I think he's very much 4th or 5th choice now.
Yeah. I wonder if Phillips will get a move somewhere, a loan move or something, because it's a bit like Martinez at Villa, right? Like he came in for Arsenal, did absolutely amazingly well, sort of was kind of challenging for the number 1, but ended up going with Leno, and then he got a move to Villa. Phillips looks to me good enough to play for a Premiership side. I think he could do a job at plenty of sides in the Prem. So it'd be interesting if he does move to a side and starts at 4-5. Could give us another option there.
Yeah, definitely. I think the kind of caliber of side that he might end up at, I think we've already got probably some 4-5 options at those clubs. It's quite a weird one with Nat Phillips because you really want him to stay at Liverpool and have the same situation as last year. That's where he becomes super good value, where he's playing for an elite team.
Yeah,
and gets the reliability of starts, but I just don't think we're going to get that this year, unfortunately.
No, so I guess it's same as FPL then. It's a straight up choice between Van Dijk, the cheapest one, even cheaper on FanTeam at 6. Paying a million more gets you Robertson, and paying 1.5 more gets you Trent. What are your thoughts on these? Do you think Van Dijk seems good value to me at 6, but equally, does that mean you go without Trent or Robertson, or do you maybe double up, or do you even triple up?
Well, I think with a team like Liverpool, you have to look at it almost assuming that you're going to have 3 of them at various points during the season. So it's you almost have to pick your 3 and go with it, sort of thing. And you don't really want to be moving between them, because it wastes transfers and stuff. So I think you just have to look at it at the start and look at the whole team. I don't think you're considering the goalkeeper, obviously, because there's just so much value outfield. But out of the defenders, if I was just to pick one, I would go with Van Dijk for sure. I don't know if you agree with that. He's just a great price.
Yeah, because he's 6, right? So if he was 6'5", I think it gives you more choice because I completely agree. I think at 6 that seems point 0.5 too cheap. And when I see a player who I think is that underpriced, I immediately think, yeah, that's all. I wonder if that is actually really intelligent pricing though, because the fact that we're sitting here saying Van Dijk is the best option might mean that we ignore Trent, and we know what Trent is capable of doing with free kicks and corners. Robertson's obviously taken on some of those as well. So yeah, I really like Van Dijk at 6, but I'm actually thinking of doubling, going Van Dijk and Trent, and then grabbing Salah, obviously in midfield, who we'll talk about in a minute. Because I think for 6 million, I think we'll get great value from Van Dijk. How does he fit into kind of FanTeam scoring? Because he likes a shot, doesn't he? They target him from corners and things like that. He'll the win the impact points, does defenders get that?
Yeah, but it's obviously a bit more negligible now than last year. It's still 0-3 every single win though, and if you think Liverpool are going to get between 20 and 25 wins, then that could really add up. Again, it's an extra like 8-9 points if they get to the 25 end of it.
Good maths.
Like I saw a really interesting comparison of Shaw against Van Dijk, because on FPL there's a million difference between those two players, whereas on FanTeam they're the same price. So suddenly I think someone was arguing that Shaw's much better on FPL because he's a million cheaper, which I think I agree with. But when they're the same price, I think Van Dijk edges it out of those two premium options, for example. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that is where I think, I think FanTeam is very similar to FPL. And I think the pricing on FanTeam is really, really good, actually. And I think we talked about it last time. We said it's maybe a bit easier to do when you see the Premier League prices and you can kind of tweak them a little bit based on what people are saying and problems that kind of arise. It's harder to go first. But yeah, I think decisions like that are really interesting. That's where our squads are going to differ on FanTeam compared to FPL because of just small little differences like that. So let's move over to midfield. So Salah, 12.5, so same as FPL. Mane though, a lot cheaper. He's in at 10. So again, I think they've seen that and the kind of all the outcry that there was about Mane being so similarly priced to Salah, and they've deliberately priced him down to give you that kind of option between them. Jota's there at 7.5, so again, he's a lot cheaper, and I don't think we're really going to be considering any other players. But again, they've done it again. They've created this discussion to be had about these three players. Salah obviously is the most attractive at 12.5 if money's no object. But when you've got Mane there at 10, I think he's someone definitely to consider, right?
I think they've just absolutely nailed it. I think Liverpool's the best example of where they've nailed the prices, to be honest. They've priced Robertson, Trent and Salah, if you will, at like their normal prices, like i.e. they almost agreed with what FPL had priced them at. But then they've identified that clearly you need to make a choice, otherwise people are just going to default to those three, I think. So they've gone really cheap on Van Dijk and Mane in particular in comparison to FPL, and I'm really struggling between. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I think I'm definitely going to have Mane and Van Dijk, and then I'm really torn between Salah and Trent.
Wow, double Liverpool attack.
Because I just think Mane is now underpriced, and I think Van Dijk's also underpriced, whereas I think the others are priced about where they should be. So they've made a really interesting debate for us. And to be honest, I think we could talk about Liverpool for this whole podcast. But
I think we probably could. Yeah, I just think this is exactly what the Premier game needed. It needed us to have debates, and it needed us to have conversations about where we're going to go in terms of a budget. And I think that's where Sancho is going to be really interesting. And we'll talk about United in a bit, but Sancho coming in, I mean, if they need to get that price right, because if they sit him just in between Rashford and Fernandes, I think people are then going to have that decision to make, and it makes the game a bit more interesting. Whereas if they just come in and whack Sancho with an 11 million price tag, or whack him at a 9 or something, he's either a no-brainer or not an option because Fernandes is there. So, yeah, I think like you say, this is a great example of FanTeam getting this right. I have no idea what Firmino's price is. I'm excited to see, because I mean FPL priced him at 9, which I think is
7.5.
Absolutely ludicrous. So they've gone for 7.5. So there you go. So again, I think they've looked at that and gone, well, no way is anyone going to pay 9 million for Firmino. But 7.5 again, I think it does put him into a bracket of maybe a bit less conversation because obviously the other options are so strong with Van Dijk, Trent, Salah, and you can't have them all of them. But if there's an injury to Jota, for example, if Firmino does go on a bit of a purple patch or something like that, he at least becomes a consideration. Whereas if he's at 9, you're just never going to go there, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, because he's so easily comparable now to the other strikers in that bracket. We've already talked about 5 or 6 of them on the last episode, I think. Like, it becomes almost, if you've only got 2 Liverpool, you can almost get to Firmino in one move, like for like, if you need to later in the season. I think he's not one to start with, but if for whatever reason you end up with less than 3 Liverpool, I think he becomes very much in play. If, as you say, someone like Mane or Jota gets injured or something like that, he's like, he comes into play later on, I think, and it's a really good price. Again, I really think it's a good price, to be honest.
Well, Lynn's asking about Jota in the chat, so we didn't really talk about him. We talked about Salah and Mane. I mean, Jota's the same price as Firmino, which I like because I see them as threats to each other because you never really know who's gonna play and or anything like that. But what do you think about Jota at 7.5? Because I got burned by him last season in my Premier League team. He just didn't do what I thought he would when I got him in towards the back end season. His stats were always like elite level, but just wasn't really registering the points. Do you think at 7.5 he is someone that we should be considering, or are you just too tempted by some of the other, bigger names?
So I think the most crucial point here, other than the price, is they've moved him from a striker to a midfielder. Is that right? Yeah, he's a midfielder now, isn't he? That's massive for his points output. Like it just gives him more opportunities at points, and like every time he gets a return, a goal specifically, he gets that extra bit of reward for it, that extra point on there every single time. I think he wasn't as in play for me last year. I think Lynn's, like we pointed out, a good point there. I think I should be considering him a bit more, to be honest. It's just so difficult
because he shoots, right? He shoots a lot. I mean, they all do. Salah, Mane, Jota, they're all kind of quite greedy players. They're all gonna. You'd expect them all to feature really highly on the shots on target rule, which gets them extra points. Jota, to me though, I think he's almost as greedy as Salah a lot of the time, and sometimes it's to the detriment of the team. I think we saw it for Portugal a few times. He made the wrong choice. He had a pretty poor tournament, really. There's a few times he could have slipped in other players and chose not to. But that's not a problem for this kind of game because I want him to take shots and I want them to try and score. So he's definitely someone I'd consider. I think Trent and Salah, even though you're right about them sort of being the right price and not getting an amazing bargain there, I still want to get both of those in. But then that third spot, I think you can make a case of Mane, Jota, Van Dijk. You could go for Robertson as well, and I think even Firmino at 7.5 if we think he's going to start games. Loads. Right, we could talk about this all day. Loads of choice in Liverpool.
I think you definitely want like the greedy players more on FanTeam as well for the 2 reasons: the shots on target, and also it doesn't have a negative impact on their BPS because there's no such thing as BPS. So it does it does lean you towards wanting the greedier players more, but. Luckily, Liverpool have got 3 of them just in midfield, so we can definitely have enough greedy players from Liverpool. It's not a problem. So
I think a lot of people are going to find, and probably myself included, that when we get to looking at our teams and we need a bit of extra money, and we've got Salah, that Salah to Mane frees up so much, then we can do so much with it that sort of downgrade becomes really, really interesting. So that's something to bear in mind, I think, because you're gaining a lot. You're not just gaining 0.5 or 1, you're gaining 2.5, which is a hell of a lot. Right, we've got to move off Liverpool. Oh, God, straight on to Man City. God, we're going to be here all night as well, probably. Okay, so we're starting goal. So we've got Ederson in goal at 6, the same price as Alisson. We've got Diaz at 6, Cancelo at 6, Laporte and Stones both at 5.5. Not too sure what's going to happen there. I assume Stones will keep his place. Bearing in mind he's had a great Euros, great season. What that means for Laporte, I don't know, because I think he's just like a world-class player. He can't have another season on the bench at City, surely.
No, they're just a plethora of talent, aren't they, across the whole pitch? It's like, to be honest, what I don't like with Man City is their fixtures aren't great to begin with. So I think we might be able to give them those first 5-6 games and just like
that Norwich game though, game week 2.
I know. You might want one for a captaincy option in game week 2 is a qualifier I'd make. So you might want an attacker, I think maybe. And again, it's that Mane versus Salah thing. If you take Mane, it's way easier to get a Man City attacker in to go next to him. So some big decisions coming up even from the start.
It's still Cancelo I like though. I think at 6, I think they could have priced him at 6.5 and made him a little bit more expensive than Diaz, but they didn't. They've chosen to keep him at 6. I think given that Mendy is pretty much out of the picture now, I think Zinchenko's been saying that he wants to leave. Again, it's that kind of thing. I see Cancelo as being first choice right back and first choice left back somehow. So when we're looking for a kind of a nailed on defender, I think he qualifies that along with Diaz too. So I do actually like him at 6 in this, and I think if we're looking for a player to come in for that Norwich game as well, he's a kind of a set and forget player that we could go for. He's the one I like anyway out of the City lot. John Stones at 5.5 could be a factor if he keeps his place too.
Yeah, I think Cancelo's my pick of the bunch from the defence, to be honest. I agree with you, mate.
We agree. Nice. That's good. Right, midfield then. So De Bruyne is there at 11.5, so a bit cheaper than FPL, $1 million cheaper than Salah, for example. Sterling keeps a premium price at 10, poor season, but great tournament. Then we drop down quite a lot. So Mahrez is in at 8.5, Foden's there at 8, Gundogan's had a price hike up to 7.5. Surely Gundogan's not going to have another season like he did last year. But if they don't sign a striker, there's no reason why. I mean, if they don't sign a striker, Gundogan at 7.5 could be an absolute steal.
I think this is where I'm looking to target. I think I'm going to go for one of these mid-priced ones as my Man City way in. I really like Ferran Torres at 7, mate. I really think that's a great price as well.
Do you think he'll play though?
I mean, I think if they don't sign a striker, I think he is at the forefront to play, especially if De Bruyne is injured as well. There's very much a lot of talk that De Bruyne might miss the start. Even if he's not having an operation, he might just be rested for a few weeks. So if they don't have a striker and De Bruyne is injured, I think Ferran Torres, Foden, Mahrez, Gundogan, I think you should have to take a punt on one of them and just hope they get a run in the team, because if they do, they'll get so many points, you'd imagine, wouldn't you?
I guess if Gundogan's if De Bruyne's out, then maybe Gundogan plays deeper to kind of try and cover that kind of hole and fill that void of De Bruyne being out. So yeah, I think Ferran Torres or Foden probably are the strongest options there. I mean, Mahrez is injured. I mean, Mahrez, no player frustrates me as much as Riyad Mahrez. He was the bane of my season last year. He's the bane of my season every year. Every year I seem to end up with him for a few weeks and manage to dodge all his points. And he always ends up with 170, 180 points, but never really feels like he's been a factor. But he did start to show last season that I think he was a bit more trusted last year than I think we've seen. He's always got that rotation risk though. 8.5 is a good price though, isn't it? Tempting
price. I think I'm the opposite to you with Mahrez. I always hit the points like every single time. I just like get him in weirdly. So I've got a real soft spot for Mahrez, and he's very much a consideration for me as well. 8.5 just feels like a perfect price to me.
It's funny how that's why I love playing FPL. We all have these stories about different players. I know, like Josh King, for example. Like I cannot stand him. Like his name gives me like PTSD, because the back end of like a few seasons ago when he's just scoring every week, I just ignored him. And yeah, he's some people's like cult heroes. They've got like whole murals on their wall like dedicated to him. I can't stand him. It's like same with Mahrez. It's funny what this game does to us. So we mentioned about City not having any strikers. They do have one striker. We should mention Gabriel Jesus. He's in at 8.5. I think I wanted a bit more of a discount than that. I think I'd like, maybe it's one of those you look at if it's like 7 or 7.5 or something, just in case he starts like 2/3 of the games or whatever. But no, 8.5. I think I'd rather spend money. Imagine being the only striker at Manchester City and not even being guaranteed to start games. Like that is, and like he was Pep's kind of golden child, but he's just not good enough. I don't think he's just not good enough to play in such an elite side. And if they went out and signed Kane, my God, they would just tear up the league, wouldn't they? There's no one would have any hope.
I've had this problem on the daily games on FanTeam actually. So I've picked a Man City striker, knowing that if they don't play for whatever reason, I'll get the backup striker, and then they've just played without a striker. So I've ended up with no player in my team basically. So that happens all the time. Yeah. So I don't think there's any sort of evidence to say that Jesus would start up front, even if they had no other striker, is there? So,
Nope.
I think it's an avoid for me.
Absolutely. Oh, we've got another big team now, because obviously we go on straight on to Man United. It's relentless, this video. When do we start getting into the Norwiches and the Watfords? I'll make it a bit easier.
That'll be soon, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah, good. Be a bit quicker there. So I think that FanTeam have priced the United goalkeepers here with a bit of, we don't really know who's going to be number one. So take your pick out of Henderson or De Gea. Both at 5, though. 5 seems good price. Well, because we're going to know, right? Game week 1. We're going to know who first choice is.
It's a great price, mate. And I think the favourite's Henderson at the moment, I believe, if we had to pick it right now. I think Henderson's very near the top of my list of Man United assets I want to pick. I mean, 5 million feels 0.5 too cheap, doesn't it, I think?
Would you risk it from the start, or would you wait a week?
I don't. I'm not going to be changing my goalkeeper, I don't think, until like my wild card or whatever. Or at least fingers crossed. Anyway,
well, that's what I mean. So do you risk it? Because if say you go for Henderson and then De Gea starts game week 1, you've immediately given yourself a goalkeeper transfer to make. Is it worth the risk?
Yeah, unless you think it might be worth going for a 5 and then a 4-5 backup goalkeeper. I don't think that's the end of the world to spend 9.5 to avoid having to make a transfer. If it like say have a Sanchez to go with Henderson, I don't think that's a disaster, is it, for 9.5? Because if you get the Man United starting goalkeeper, that's just set and forget, isn't it? Really, till you wild card, or maybe even for the whole season if they stay at that
Henderson
sort of price.
Sanchez, I think could be a really shrewd double up to go with. I like that.
Sanchez is my 4-5 of choice, I think, to be the backup to a 5. I think.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so in defence, Shaw's more expensive than FPL. I did think he was underpriced on FPL, so I think they've done the right thing again there. Because I mean, it's again like you're looking at Shaw and Wan-Bissaka. If they're the same price, why on earth would you go for Wan-Bissaka? There's no reason to. But Shaw's 0.5 more, so it gives you a decision to make. And the same with Maguire at 5.5 as well. Lindelof's there at 5. I imagine they're going to sign a new centre back. Sorry, Lynn, in the chat, but don't think he's good enough to play for United. So yeah, I'll be keeping my eye on that. I mean, there's talks of Varane, isn't there, coming in? That'd be a hell of a partnership with Maguire if that happens. But what's your thinking here? Do you think Shaw at 6 is worth the extra money over Wan-Bissaka and Maguire, or would you be a bit tempted to pay a bit less?
I think in this team, mate, I think I'm sort of making my bed and I'm going to just pick the goalkeeper. I think all these defenders are priced about right and there's better value elsewhere for me. If Shaw was 5.5, he'd be in my team, I think. I think that would be too good to resist. But 6 million feels about right to me. What about you? Yeah,
it's tricky. I mean, Shaw, Van Dijk and Cancelo all at 6. I think we're going to have one of those. I think we could make a couple of FanTeam teams and have one of each in each one, and you might be quite a good idea to do that, because I think any of those three, I still think all of those three should outscore their price tag. If you know what I mean? So I think 6 million is a good price for them, but I'd expect them to score points, reflective of if they were even more. I think Shaw could be in for I mean, he just seems to be improving every time I see him play, and that's been going on for well over a year now. So if he can make another step up, he could be hitting his numbers already like elite, and so are Cancelo's as well. I mean, the stats between those, and then you've got the consistency of Van Dijk if they can get that defensive solidity back. So yeah, I think Shaw and Cancelo, just for that attacking potential, is what I'm looking at. So yeah, be a tricky one to choose out of those. I think you're right though, with the goalkeepers there at 5. I think maybe Cancelo is still my favourite.
Yeah, I think Henderson's got the saves, obviously, as we saw towards the back end of last season. And I think if you force me to pick a Man United defender, I think I'd go for Shaw as well.
Yeah. Okay, so midfield. So Sancho's been added. He's come in very cheap at 9. Same price as Rashford. He's not going to be 9 on FPL. I'd be absolutely amazed if he came in at 9. Greenwood's there at 7.5, and then of course Bruno is there at 12, so a bit cheaper than Salah. So that makes Salah the most expensive player in the game, I'm guessing, which can't really argue with that. So again, this is just another just really interesting debate though, isn't it? I mean, Bruno at 12, I'm thinking, that's got to be a lot. He's got to suit FanTeam so well. But then I look at Sancho at 9, and with Rashford out at the start of the season, he's definitely going to play. He's definitely going to come straight in, I'd imagine, even though he's been on with England. He hasn't played that much, so I can't imagine he needs a huge rest. I think it's Sancho for me in this. I think I'm looking at that and thinking he's $1 million underpriced again, and they're the ones that we're talking about, aren't we? That we like the look of. What do you reckon?
Absolutely, mate. I think 9 million compared to 12 million. I think if you're only having one Man United midfielder, you take Sancho all day. It's interesting again. If Man United were to sign Kane, like, do you think Bruno would lose penalties to Kane? Surely he would, right? If that was to happen.
I don't know. I mean,
it's an interesting
Bruno
one. Bruno
is arguably one of the top 5 penalty takers in the world. I guess Kane is as well. I don't know. I think Bruno would fight tooth or nail to keep him, but no, I'll go on a limb. I'll say Bruno keeps him.
It's an interesting one because Bruno sort of knows his place with the Portugal national team. He doesn't even try and take them. You know what I mean? Ronaldo takes them, sort of thing. That's just it. And I wonder if there'd be a similar sort of dynamic at Man United if Kane was to sign. But these are all hypotheticals anyway. I mean, for now, Bruno has penalties, so I think he's still really nicely priced at 12. But Sancho at 9, as you nailed it, $1 million too cheap, I think. So I think I'm going to be starting with Sancho if he's all like, if we know he's going to start game week 1 and stuff. I think Sancho starts, especially with Rashford's injury, or I think he's getting an operation, right? So we know Sancho starts now. I mean, if there was ever any doubt anyway. And it might even bring Greenwood into play as well at 7.5. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Martial is knocking around as well. I mean, I guess given that Sancho has been off for so long with England, I do wonder if maybe Martial could go on the left and Greenwood on the right, and then Cavani up front. That could be an option for them to start with. Also, with Sancho, you know, there's just that little bit of worry that okay, his numbers in the Bundesliga are absolutely outrageous. So are Werner's. You know, and with Fernandes, you pay more, but you know he delivers every week almost. When he blanks, it's a rarity. Are we going to get that from Sancho, or is he going to be a player who, you know, hits some big holes but blanks a bit more and stuff? I'm just not sure. I just think that's really, really interesting because I think you can make a case for both. I can see why you just pay the 12 for Fernandes and just be like, he's a lock in my team. He takes the penalties. He's going to have another amazing season, 250 points, blah, blah, blah. Sancho, there is a bit more of a dice roll, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I took my first look at this like over a week ago, I think a bit's changed since then. But I really liked the look of Pogba at 7. But he's just not going to play in that left wing role anymore where he was playing last season. He looked so advanced in that role. But there's talk that he might leave, isn't there? So I think that's just a wait and see for now, / full avoid maybe. But yeah, if I had to rank them, I'd go Sanchez 1, Fernandes 2. Sancho 1, Fernandes 2. Rather, definitely not Sanchez. I don't want him. All right. But,
yeah, and I mean Greenwood as well. I love Greenwood. Greenwood, I just think he's such a good player, and you know he had a poor first half of the season last year, then started to really come into it again in the second half, and he did that the year before as well. And I just wonder as he gets a bit older and stuff, whether he's going to be trusted a bit more with the kind of striker spot, right? Because Cavani's signed a new contract, but he's obviously not the long term solution to it. And I just wonder if Greenwood is. And if I keep seeing Greenwood classified as a midfielder, you know, I'm just going to constantly be thinking to myself, he's not a midfielder. He wants the striker spot. He wants to play up front. And Martial's out of the picture now, I think. So
yeah, he's really good for the shooting aspect that we've talked about as well. He shoots a lot. Greenwood does. He's accurate as well. He's really good finisher. I like him on the right as well, though. That's the thing, because he cuts in and takes like really nice shots from there. He scored quite a few goals cutting in. So I don't mind if he's playing up front or on the right, to be honest. I know he's going to be very direct, and I think it was something England might have done really well to have in the Euros, actually.
I honestly think he was a big miss for us.
Yeah, I really do too. I think he's just so talented and so direct, and accurate's a really good word, actually.
Yeah. So then forwards, I mean, there's Cavani and Martial, both at 8. I know Cavani's really popular in FPL. I can't get excited about him. I don't think he's an option. I think you're always going to be worried about whether he starts, when he's subbed, everything like that. I still see him as this more kind of I know he had a good season, but this kind of ambassador, more, bring the young players through, and he's a great image for the club, and such a professional and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if I'd want him in my actual FPL team.
He's never been the sort of player I would look at on FanTeam because of that unreliability of minutes. He's never, ever going to get 90 because he'll get subbed off even if he starts. He gets like 60, 70. You could maybe say that about a few of these other Man United players, but definitely not Bruno, for example. I'm not going to be picking Cavani. I think I like the guys who are like almost nailed and like talismanish for their team. So I think you can get that for a similar price to 8. So I think I'll probably look elsewhere for the striker slots.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so we now start moving on to some less exciting teams. Apologies to fans of these clubs. We start with Newcastle. So Dubravka's there at 4-5. I really like the look of that. I did read somewhere that he might be injured for the start of the season, which is a bit of a shame because he is someone that I was considering. Darlow's there at 4-5 as well, obviously the replacement. But yeah, I mean, Dubravka's number 1, so I think that just eliminates the Newcastle goalkeepers, at least from the start. In defence, they're all 4-5. So Shah's there at 4-5, which isn't too bad. Clark's there at 4-5. Lascelles as well. Newcastle defence, though, hard to get too excited about, right?
I mean, Lascelles is always the default one I go for if they have like a double or something, or play in a blank or something. Like Lascelles is my go-to guy, but 4-5, it's nothing to get excited about. I mean, if they rotate well with another one of your defenders, I think it's an option, and I don't think 4-5 is an outrageous price, but nothing to get excited about, I don't think.
Afraid not. I mean, the big thing in midfield is they've correctly classified Saint-Maximin as a midfielder. I do not know why FPL have gone with a forward classification for him. It's just absolutely bizarre. If you're classifying him as a forward, you've got to classify Salah, you've got to classify everyone. Like he played a little bit up front when they had injuries, but isn't a striker. Very strange.
There tends to be one bizarre one every year, mate. This is the bizarre positional error on FPL, I think. But I'm glad he's a midfielder. Is he 6 or 6'5"? Is he?
He's 6'5".
I think
so
that's
not cheap.
No, it's fine. Obviously, it's more attractive than FPL just because of the positional change. But I don't think I'll be starting with Saint-Maximin personally. What about you?
I don't like him as an FPL pick. I think I've said it before on podcasts. I love him as a player. I think he's electric. I don't think he's electric. He is electric. He must be the worst player to play against, I think, I can ever imagine, because he's just so fast, so strong. But you look at his points, he just doesn't deliver. He doesn't score enough. He doesn't make enough assists. He's had a price hike. I think it was 5-5 on the game. I'm on enough FPL. He's now a striker and 6 or whatever he is. To me, it's just he doesn't shoot enough. He doesn't hit the right. He's one of those players, great player, just doesn't hit the right things to make him a fantasy player, I don't think.
Very injury prone as well. That's the other thing. Like it's a transfer waiting to happen, isn't it?
I
don't get excited about Newcastle attack, so I don't think anyone else should either, to be honest.
No, I mean the only player I would consider the Newcastle side, I think, is Wilson at 7-5. I think he's great. I mean, if Brighton had Callum Wilson, we would be in such a good position. He's so clinical. Like he just barely needs any chance, and he'll get a goal. He does seem the kind of player that I think suits FanTeam. He's definitely a fantasy player. He's a bit of a fantasy legend for a lot of people. 7-5's a fair bit for a Newcastle striker, but he's got the pedigree.
I think you're going to get between 10 to 15 goals from him. Yeah. I think he's always got that when he's been in the Premier League. So I don't think it's a terrible pick. To be honest, I'm a bit unsure on what their fixtures are at the start. That's would be my only concern on that. But if they've got decent fixtures, I think he's more than good pick at 7-5.
Check on the Fantasy Scout website. So Newcastle, West Ham at home, Aston Villa away, Southampton at home, United away, Leeds at home. So first 3, not too bad. West Ham at home and then Villa away, then Southampton at home. Not amazing. Probably not.
In the middle somewhere, those fixtures, aren't they? Like I don't think he's a bad pick because I know, as you said, people have a bit of an affiliation to Callum Wilson sometimes. So if he's one of your favourites, then I don't think he's a terrible pick at all. But probably not for me to start, I don't think.
Yep, fair enough. Okay, Norwich. So Norwich obviously promoted. They look to me like they're in a much better position than they were last season. I was actually talking to a Norwich fan yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. And he was saying that Farke had a 5-year plan and they got promoted within 2. And basically they just didn't really know what to do because they just weren't ready. They hadn't got the kind of structure that they wanted, and they kind of just went straight back down without really putting up too much of a fight. But now they're kind of... the general consensus is they're much more ready to actually have a challenge and sort of cement themselves in the Premier League. And I think that's reflected on their defensive numbers, much better defensively now, much more solid. They've got rid of Buendia, they've got money coming from that. I don't think Buendia was really trusted anyway, especially given how he was barely used in the last time they were in the Premier League. So I feel quite good about Norwich. I don't think they're going to be whipping boys like they were a few years ago, but equally, who do we consider?
I'm glad they're stuck with the manager, mate, because often, sometimes they're victims of their own success, aren't they? So, like, if they get promoted, then relegated,
you know about
they get
that with Bilic, right?
Well, exactly, mate. So West Brom exactly the same. So we were victims of our own success because we had a 2-year plan, the same as Norwich, and we got promoted after 1, and we weren't ready in that year. It was a year too early. So I know the exact feeling of Norwich, but I'm glad they stuck with him, and they do seem a lot better defensively from what I saw in the Championship last year. So hopefully that continues. What do you think about the goalie?
Well, Tim Krul, I mean, God knows how Tim Krul is still playing. I mean, how old is he now? He's been all over the show, hasn't he? I'll never forget him for that penalty save, coming off the bench and saving that penalty. That was, what a career he's had. I mean, there's no way I'm considering a Norwich goalkeeper in all honesty. Not with Sanchez at 4-5 as well, but he's a decent shot stopper, so could do well.
It's just the saves, isn't it? You'd be picking him for the saves with these promoted teams, and to be honest, he might be. I think I prefer him to the Watford goalie, to be honest. After I saw him in the Euros, I mean, he pulled an absolute clanger in the Euros. I remember that Bachmann guy, the Austrian keeper.
He had a good first game, saved the penalty, and.
But I think you've nailed it. Sanchez is just such a good price at 4-5. I don't think you need to look beyond that, do you? Really?
No, I don't think so. And then in defence, I mean, Hanley is like a man reborn. He's there at 4-5. They've got Zimmerman as well, Byram too at 4-5. So again, all just 4-5 options across the board. I think again we can kind of just say the same thing that we said before. It's if they work in kind of your rotation pairings and they work as a kind of a cheap defender, then maybe. But I think like you said with Norwich, the goalkeeper I can make a case for because they're going to make loads of saves. The defence, you're not going to get attacking returns. You're probably not going to get many clean sheets. You're not going to get any. What's the best you're going to hope for? I think you can do better.
I think you'd be looking at these at 4-0 maybe if they were 4-0. You know what I mean, rather than 4-5. It just feels 0-5 too much again for me.
Yeah, agreed. And then in midfield, I mean, Cantwell had a great season in the Premier League. He was one of the few players that kind of really shone in that. So he's in at 5-5 again. I mean, Gilmore's there at 4-5. He's in a lot of FPL teams because he's the cheapest midfielder. Classy player. I think he's got a lot to prove. I think he's going to want to have a good season, go back to Chelsea, try and make a stake for the first team. So he's probably the best sort of enabler, I'd say, at 4-5.
So I'm going to make an outrageous statement here. I think Billy Gilmore is the most nailed player in my team for game week 1 on FanTeam. He's going to be my 8th attacker, 4.5. I won't be changing from that, I don't think. I think it's a great price for him. I think he'll massively outscore that price point. And hopefully I'll get some of the points when one of my attackers doesn't play for whatever reason. Hopefully I can just leave him there. He'll play every game, I'd imagine, for Norwich because he's like a bit too good for that level, I'd say.
Yeah. Amazing signing for him.
He's an amazing signing for Norwich, and I think he's going to be someone who's in my team in game week 1 on most of my teams, I'd say.
Because they had Skip, and Skip was very popular there, had a really good season for the Championship. He's gone back to Spurs. There was no sign that they were going to loan him out again. Obviously, with Nuno there, probably wants to evaluate and see everyone. So they moved quickly, got Gilmore in to kind of plug that hole. And I think you're right. I think it's a hell of a signing for him because from what I've seen of him, he's fantastic. And he's not really defensive, right? He's not like a Kante or a Jorginho or something like that. He's someone almost like kind of box to box, likes to be in the thick of the action. 4-5 is, yeah.
He's great at passing the ball. I might worry he might get a few yellow cards in that team just because they'll probably have to make that tackle on the break. You know what I mean, when the other team's breaking. But no, I'm going to pick Billy Gilmore at 4-5. I think I just love, like, he's just an exciting player, young player. I think I'll have him at 4-5. I can't see many other good 4-5 options really.
Kind of the future of Scotland. I think if they've got any chance of qualifying and getting past the group stages or winning a game, then they're going to have to rely on him, I think. So up front, you've got Pukki there at 6. So same price as Tony as well. Is it Tony you'd favour out of the two, or do you think there is a case to be made for Pukki?
I think, like, just looking at last year's stats, I think, like, I'm going to favour Tony, I think. But I don't think Pukki's an awful... I don't think their fixtures are so bad. I think that they've got a bad game week 1, haven't they? Have they got Liverpool first week?
But then City.
Yeah, so it's just Tony, isn't it?
It's just got to be Tony. Worst 2 games possible.
It's just got to be Tony, hasn't it? I think
so.
Maybe Pukki comes into play later on a little bit, like if you're making a move or if someone gets injured or something. But for now, I think it's Tony out of those two.
Well, it's useful to have the option, right? Because if Tony doesn't perform in the first couple of games, at least you've got a relatively easy move over to Pukki if he is showing something. You know, if he might not, he's not going to get 3 goals in the first 2 games, but he might have good stats. He might have had some chances. It depends how the kind of, because without Buendia as well, we don't know how that link up's going to work. Like, who's going to be feeding him? It's going to be Gilmore and Cantwell, but
I don't. There's many other 6-0 strikers either, so it's nice to have another option to move off Tony onto. I think I don't think there's many other that are sort of like really nailed on strikers, for example. So that might be really nice to have actually.
Yep, absolutely. So Southampton. So we got Forster and McCarthy. They're both at 4-5. Got to think McCarthy is, again, I don't particularly rate McCarthy. Good shot stopper again, but lost his place to Forster, then got it back, and then lost it again and got it back. I do wonder if they're going to just go out and sign a better goalkeeper, because I think they probably need one. But they're both 4-5. I imagine McCarthy will start the season. Then they've got a couple of 5s in defence. So Walker Peters and Vestergaard are both 5. Bednarek's there at 4-5. Perold's there at 5. I haven't even heard of him, so can't comment on him. Do you know much about him?
He's the new right back they've signed. I believe
the Bertrand replacement.
No, I think he's a right back.
No, Bertrand's left, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I think Perot is a right back actually, which is weird because they've already got Kyle Walker-Peters. I'll need to check that one, because I had a feeling Perot signed and it was sort of blocking one of the Williams players from Liverpool from coming to Southampton and being nailed, sort of thing. So he definitely plays fullback. 5 million again. I think that's. I don't think I like that price for any of those Southampton defenders. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he's a left back. They've got Walker Peters at right back, and I presume Bednarek and Vestergaard will play centre back, right?
Yeah. So Bednarek's there at 0.5. So
then that's the pick, if any.
He's the pick.
You get Bednarek if you know that he's going to be first choice, which I think he is. So I think I like
this. Yeah. I mean, Walker Peters last year was decent at 4-5. You know, he did a job. He did quite well, especially at the start of the season. But I'm not paying 5 for him. Okay, midfield. So Ward-Prowse is there at 6-5. So I think looking at Ward-Prowse versus Maximan, if you need a 6-5, I think it's Ward-Prowse for me. He seems to be the kind of player that would suit FanTeam, right? He shoots a fair bit. He's on all the set pieces, corners. He's going to play 90 minutes, which you like every match. Is he a factor? He don't seem too excited.
No, I'm very excited, mate.
You're very excited.
Mate.
Okay.
He was one of my cult heroes from last year, mate. I have to say, I had him for most of the season in my winning team. He's just FanTeam gold, I think, because he's on all the set pieces. He definitely gets penalties if Ings leaves for whatever reason as well. I believe Ings is going to leave. So he's on penalties. He gets all the other set pieces, and he plays 90 every single game. He's just one of those that if you have him and play him every week, he's going to get to that magic sort of, I don't know, 140, 150. You know what I mean? That for a midfielder for that price, it's just a phenomenal value, isn't it? So I think he's in my team. I think.
Cool. Well, that is much more. Your shrug of the shoulders was misleading, but actually you're waxing lyrical about it. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. I mean, obviously, I didn't play FanTeam last year. I played the Euros game. It was obviously a bit different because, like we said, the 90 minutes thing wasn't so much of a factor because of all the subs and stuff. But I'm looking at Ward-Prowse. I'm looking at Mount as well, who we talked about in the last video, and thinking they seem to be that kind of, you know, instrumental player who's going to play most of the time and involved in a lot. So I'm really pleased to hear you say Ward-Prowse is I think more of a factor on this than he probably is in FPL. 6.5 seems a good price for him as well.
I think people don't pick that sort of player because they're a bit boring, and they are boring. Don't get me wrong; it's one of the most boring picks you can possibly make because he doesn't do anything in open play whatsoever, basically. But all those points add up from like just a header off a corner when he curls in 3 free kicks a season off direct free kicks, and then when he's got penalties as well. If he has them, I think it becomes a really strong pick. I think, mate.
Yep. And also, if the prices are done on performance, like you said, so prices going up, he's consistent, right? He's always putting in decent performances. It's very unlikely he's going to see a big price drop down to 6 million or something. So yeah, lots of reasons to like him as this kind of mid-price player. Up front, so you mentioned Ings. He's in at 8. I think he's probably going to go. He's turned down a new contract. I think he could do a job anywhere. I think City could sign him and he would do a job for him. You know, I think he's a good player. I mean, I don't think he's going to be like the answer to their Aguero, replacement. But I think you're 1-0 down with 70 minutes, being able to bring on Danny Ings. I think he's brilliant. I just think he's such a good player, and I think he would be playing at a proper big side if he hadn't had the injuries that he's had over his career. So shame there. So I think he to me is a wait and see. I mean, Che Adams at 6.5 though. What do you reckon about him if Ings? What if Ings does these, or even if he doesn't?
If Che Adams is first choice striker for Southampton, I think he's a really good pick again. To be honest, I think his problem last year was always the minutes. You didn't know if he was going to start. You didn't know if he was going to get taken off at half time, because the manager did that quite a few times as well.
Yep.
If Ings is out of the picture, I can't see any competition for him unless they sign a new striker, obviously, which I guess they probably would, right? But I'm interested in Ings more so, mate. If he gets a move, depending on where he goes, and he's first choice striker somewhere, he could be an unbelievable price at 8 million still. He's just a goal scorer, isn't he?
He is. Come to Brighton, Danny. Well, I don't know why you would. I don't think we could afford your wages, but if you fancy a new challenge, then come to Brighton. And
he might have to move house, Addy. That might be a good point. It's quite close, isn't it? So he might be all right if he lives near London or whatever.
I think he's pushing for a big move rather than not even sideways. Definitely a downgrade down to us.
I think that prices him out of FanTeam though, doesn't it? If he goes to like a good team, because he's probably not going to have the minutes nailed. It's
exactly.
We almost want him to go to. We want him to go to Brighton. I think that might be like one of the ideal moves, actually. To be honest, like where he's going to start.
I mean, we're going to talk about Spurs now. I mean, Kane leaves, Ings to Spurs, 8 million.
Could be one of the underpricings of the season if that happens. I think because he's going to be first choice if Kane leaves and he's the only one they bring in. So that's quite an exciting one. Maybe we can hold out for Spurs.
There you go. Okay, so talking about Spurs. So Lloris is in at 5.5, and then in defence they've gone really cheap with defenders for Spurs. I was really surprised by this. Reguilon's 5, Doherty's 5, Aurier's 5, Alderweireld's 5. And then it's like Davinson Sanchez and Dyer at 4.5. So the cheapest starting Spurs defender is 5. I mean, Nuno he's a good manager, right? I don't think he's the most exciting person they could have got, but generally speaking, Wolves were a solid, formidable team to play against. I really like the look of Reguilon at 5.
I like both of them, mate. I think if Doherty proves to be Nuno's favourite again, I think him and Reguilon. This is part of the reason why I'm not so big on Shaw, because I think there's so many other underpricings. I think these are two of them. I think they should both have been 5.5. I think Doherty should have been 5 with the information we had at the time. But under Nuno, I think he's almost might be worth 5.5 if he's nailed. And Reguilon's definitely worth 5.5, I think. So I think these are two. I'll be having one of these in quite a few of my teams, I think, because I think it's a risk worth taking. The price is really good. And Spurs won't be a terrible defensive team under Nuno, I don't think. As you said, he's a bit boring, isn't he? So I think they might rack up some clean sheets, which on top of the attacking returns, 5 million could be great value for these pair, I think. Yeah. I
think Doherty's a wait and see for me, but Reguilon is. I think my team is definitely going to have Reguilon in at 5. I really like Reguilon. I think he's a really good player. I think he's one of the best players in the team. And if Kane leaves, they're going to have very few sort of elite level players, and he'd be one of them. Okay, so Son's there now in midfield, 9.5, so $1 million less than in FPL. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I'm
I
guessing
think
you do
Son's
too.
the midfielder to consider on this.
Yeah.
Another one, I mean, I won't ever go for this, I don't think, but one to just flag is Højbjerg scores really well on FanTeam because he's a 90-minute man again. He just gets 90 every single game, and he gets the odd assist or goal. I mean, like, I don't think I'll be picking him personally because I think I've got too many other players I want, but Son's very much number one, I'd say.
Yeah,
I
and
really
again,
love that price.
yeah, me too. I think the price again it makes it. He's cheaper than he's a little bit more expensive than Sancho, but around the same price as Mane. He's if he they price him at 10, 11, something like that, like FPL have done. It's really hard to fit him in, but I think you can fit him in at 9.5, given that we can save some money elsewhere.
He's proven in the
yeah,
Premier League as well. It's massive factor. He's been around for 4 or 5 years now. 9.5, that feels like a really good price to me.
absolutely. What do you talk about Dele Alli at 6.5? New manager, new start.
That could be a fun one, couldn't it? To be honest, I mean, I don't think he gets the 90 to begin with, but
No,
he
that's a good
was
point.
such a talent 5 years ago, and like you thought he would be playing in this Euros, for example, for England, and he wasn't even in consideration for the squad. Do you know what I mean? So if he can revive his career, 6.5's too cheap for him. But as it stands, I think they've priced him about right? With the information we have,
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. I think if
But
the
I
Euros
hope
had taken place last year, he'd have been in the squad. Might even have been starting.
And I hope he can revive his career, by the way, because it seems like he's had a few bad breaks and he hasn't been in favour with the last few managers for whatever reason. So this is really his chance to get back in the team, isn't it? So,
Yep. Okay, so now Kane. So Kane up front, 12 million. So same price as De Bruyne, a bit cheaper than Salah. So there's two questions for you here. Do you get him if he stays at Spurs? Do you get him if he moves to City?
oh God, imagine Harry Kane at Man City. I think that would be like FPL gold, do you, or FanTeam gold rather? I mean,
There's
where would you
absolutely no
prefer him?
way. Well, there's no way that I wouldn't have him if he was at City. Like he would just be the number one. It would rip up my FPL team as well because he'd get 30 goals.
I think
I've
he'd
got
be like
no question.
I think he'd be like one of these auto caps, like a lot of weeks,
Yeah.
genuinely, like in the past where we've had Suarez, I believe, like many, many moons ago. I think Harry Kane would be an auto cap a lot of weeks if he was at Man City because you'd know he was going to start. And like you say, it's 25, 30 goals waiting to happen, isn't it? What would you think if he went to United? I don't think that's going to happen now, but I think that would be my least favourite out of the three, maybe out
Yeah,
of
mine too.
Spurs, Man City, and yeah. But I think he's still in consideration if he's going to sign a new 4 or 5 year contract at Spurs. I don't think I'd mind him at Spurs at all. I mean,
No.
we already know he suits that team. You know what I mean? He just scores goals in that team. So if he was to stay at Spurs, I don't mind his price at all. He's someone I very much like to captain. So I think it justifies the price a bit more if you're going to stick the armband on him sometimes. But yeah, please go to Man City, Harry.
I think you hit the nail on the head completely. I think if he goes to Man City, we know he's going to get 25 plus goals. If he stays at Tottenham, we know he's going to get between 15 and 20, have another banging season and do well. If he goes to United, I just think there's enough question marks. I think, how's he going to fit in the team? Will he get on with the players? Is Pogba going to stay or go? Is he going to have
Will he
penalties?
get penalties?
Exactly.
Penalties is huge.
There's too many questions to make me think I could probably go without him. And I think at Spurs as well, I think there's other premiums that... I mean, like I think the question is probably more Kane or De Bruyne, for example, and I think I'd favour De Bruyne just like over the season, but it's
Unless they're in the same team. Unless they're in the same team, and then I think I'd take Kane. Like Man City should sign Kane just for the penalties more than anything, so they've got someone to stick the ball in the net when Sterling gets fouled in the box. So
all these things from Pep as well. We don't have the money to pay. Of course, I hate it when he says that. You know full well you've got the money. You spend 100 million on your defence every bloody season. Just sign Kane. He's exactly what you need. You'll win everything unless you play him at right back in the Champions League final for some reason, because that's what you like to do. But yeah, interesting. It's going to be one that rumbles on, I think.
Kane, we have to wait for the next few weeks. I think we'll get an answer in the next few weeks, won't we? So I think that'll be enough for us.
Okay, Watford next. So your favourite goalkeeper, Backman, is at 4.5. Don't think we need to talk about him too much. I agree. I think we prefer Krul. Danny Rose has got a move, so he's in there at 4.5. Now they've got Firmino, an old favourite. He's there. Cathcart, Cabaselli. A lot of these players are recognised from when Watford were last in the Premier League. It's probably Danny Rose for me at 4-5 if I was going to consider a Watford defender. Again, it's that same
they
thing.
do have they've got a really nice run of fixtures at the start, Watford do. Like, so it might be more, for me, I'd probably go for more a midfielder or a striker if I was going to have one. But Danny Rose is the pick of the defenders.
Yeah, well, midfield, the obvious one is Sarr, obviously at 6. So he's coming cheaper than St Maximan and Ward-Prowse, for example. He's someone that I'm considering in FanTeam and in FPL. I can't believe they kept him. Cannot believe it.
He was going to go when they went down, if anything, wasn't it? But the fact that he stayed all this season, I think it's almost a no-brainer for him to stay now, obviously, to give them a go in the Prem again.
When they got relegated, I couldn't believe they managed to keep hold of it. I think Liverpool were in talks for 35 million, 40 million or something for him. And
exactly, yeah. I didn't think they were going to keep him either. I'm hoping we get the same with Mateus Pereira, to be honest, but I don't think that's going to happen. There's talk he might stay, but we'll see. Because I think he'd be a great option on this if he went to the right club, actually.
He would.
But Sarr at 6, he's a consideration on both games for me, FPL and FanTeam. But just maybe for the first 6 games where they've got some really nice fixtures. We know how good he is, and I don't think I'd consider anyone else from Watford, would you?
Well, I've got a real soft spot for Will Hughes. I watched years ago, I watched a Soccer AM thing, and it was like, those like trick battles. And it was Will Hughes versus someone, and Will Hughes just dominated it, and he was just like absolutely unbelievable. And I always think of him doing those tricks when I watch it. But how can you not be the best footballer like in the world? Because the stuff he was doing was absolutely outrageous. And he has patches where he looks really good. And 4-5, I think, he's coming in at like absolute bargain basement. So I think he's someone to maybe consider over Gilmore, just for tricks alone.
I'd miss that one, mate. I quite like that price at 4-5. I think the last time he was in the Prem on FPL, I remember he was 5 or 5-5. So 4-5 seems really good to me. Yeah, I don't mind that if he's going to be nailed in the team still. Yeah,
I'd look for any excuse to get him in because I think he's got some class about him, but I think he's just not going to quite hit the heights that I thought when I saw him do the trick battle. This is the worst punditry ever. Typical of me. So forwards, it's João Pedro. Another terrible bit of punditry from me. He is an absolute legend on Football Manager in the last couple of seasons. So, that's a great bit of analysis for you. He's obviously Deeney's there as well. Andre Gray there. Josh King has signed. So they've got quite a few different forward options now. But it's Pedro, the one that I think most people are looking at and excited by. And 5-5 could be another rival to Tony and Pookie. Good fixtures.
Yeah, I don't think you can discount your favourite Josh King either, mate, to be honest. I mean, they've signed him for some money, I think. So I think they intend to play him, I think. But you know what puts me off with Watford? The sheer amount of strikers that you see on this list here. I mean, they've got the same on FPL. They've got about 8 strikers listed on FPL. I've never seen a team like it, to be honest.
They've got 10 on FanTeam.
Yeah, I think just because of that sheer number, I think I'd want a little bit of clarity on who's first choice. I think Pedro will start, and
Pedro is like he's the man, like he's the one that everyone's excited about. So I think he's got it now. It's just whether he plays with a strike partner, where Josh King plays. Is it on the right? Is it at 10? Question marks.
If nothing else, with this amount of strikers, though, you probably worry about the 90-minute factor, don't you?
Absolutely.
Because it seems like there's a lot of subs going to happen in this position. So even if he's first choice and they make 3 striker subs, he's still going to come off. You know what I mean? So, one to watch again. But I do really like the fixtures, so I don't think it's a bad punt.
I think if you've built your team and you've got 5-5 left for a forward or something, I think Pedro or King could do a job for you. I don't think they're absolutely awful, but equally, if you can find a bit more money, then it's probably best to do that. Okay, West Ham next. So Fabianski's in at 5. I think that's probably about the right price. Creswell's the most expensive, 5-5. Absolutely incredible season he had last season. And then Soufal's there at 5 as well. Masuaku's at 5, which is a bit of a shame. Thought maybe he could be 4-5 and give us a bit of an option, but you're definitely going to go for Soufal over those two. And then Diop's at 5. So I mean, Dawson, they're all 5 basically, except for Creswell. I like Soufal at 5. I like him in FPL at 5 as well. I think I'd get him over Creswell and save the 0.5. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so I think Kufal's my favourite of the defenders. Just a quick note on the goalkeeper. West Ham had a bid rejected for Sam Johnston this morning, which is quite interesting.
Ooh, that
But
is
again,
interesting.
I think he'll come in at 5. Do you? If he was to sign, that's the annoying thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
they'll just be like, it's the West Ham goalkeeper. He's going to be 5.
So to
If he was
replace
already on,
Fabianski.
I think he'd be a competition for Fabianski and maybe like a view to be like the semi long term replacement. I think because Fabianski's getting on a bit now. I think Fabianski would actually still start the season if I was to.
Yeah, so do I.
But I think it might be the sort of thing where Johnston comes in if Fabianski gets an injury because he's been quite injury prone, or if he has a dip in form. I think that Johnston would be like a very, very reasonable replacement to just come into the side at any point. I believe Fabianski's only got a year left on his contract as well. So it might be a view to sort of embedding Johnston in the team for next year. But we're standing firm at the moment. It's been rejected at the moment.
Ooh,
But
losing Johnson and Pereira, that would hurt.
yeah, it's just like, I think they will if the right bids come in. That's the thing. I think we'd probably get 40, 45 million between the two because West Ham bid 10 million for Johnston and it was instantly rejected. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, Kufal's the pick for me out of the defenders, I think.
Yeah, I mean Creswell could go on and have another amazing season. I mean, he's obviously got the set pieces. He's even playing in the back three. His chances created was still unbelievable. I think he's going to be very popular. But Soufal also had a great end to the season. Was creating lots of open play chances. So yeah, I think he's the one. What about midfield then? So they've got Ben Rama. I wonder when he's going to kind of explode because he's class. He's got something about him. He didn't have the best of seasons, didn't play a lot. I think people expect him to play more. But I wonder if he's going to become a factor. But then I guess it's Souček, right, at 6.
Yeah, I mean, the only one
man.
to add is you've got to add Jesse Lingard in here if he signs 6-5.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a great price. It's a great price. He was almost their talisman for the middle portion of the season. He was part of every goal they scored for that month period or 2-month period. I think I'd favour Lingard over Souček if Lingard was to sign. I also worry about if Rice leaves. I think that'll mean Souček has to play deeper as it stands. Just that you lose some of those like open play moments where he's like barging forward to meet across from Kufal or Cresswell. So
I don't think he'll leave.
No,
Rice.
I think it's one to monitor. If Rice stays, I think Souček's still a really reasonable price at 6. But I'd still just about favour Lingard, I think.
Yep. And then up front, just the one striker for West Ham. So they're trying to Man City it. It's a shame their one striker is made of glass and will break at any opportunity. I keep saying it. Surely they're going to sign Tammy Abraham. He just seems to me he would just be the perfect fit for West Ham. He'd just come in. He's rarely injured. He can play with Antonio because they can move Antonio to the left where he used to play. They need another striker because they're going to be in Europe. So how much is Tammy Abraham? I think is he probably 6'5"?
He was in the 6s, you said last time. I think he was 6 or 6'5".
He's 6'5". He's 6'5". So, if he signs and he's $1 million less than Antonio, and then we're not sure about where Antonio is going to play, if it's on the left or up front or whatever, then I think I'd favour Abraham. Let's assume Abraham doesn't move. What do you think about Antonio at 7'5"? If he's the only striker at West Ham, he's got to be considered.
He's a good pick until he gets injured, isn't he? He's always returned the points when he's played. He's done that for 3-4 years again now, but you just worry that it's a transfer waiting to happen again. I think their fixtures are okay as well, so I think it's fine to start with him. I'd imagine the burden of Europe's like not as bad at the start if my assumption's correct.
He just won't play.
It might be a good time to have him. Yeah, I know. Like
they'll play Bowen up front or something.
I dread to think who they'll play up front. I was going to say if if they don't sign anyone, but surely they will sign someone, right? And if it is Tammy, that could be great. But I don't mind starting with Antonio at all. To be honest, he scores goals when he plays. So if you can get 6-7 games out of him at the start, that feels more than good enough to me.
Agreed. I like him. And the final team of our, another hour. I thought we were going to get through this quicker, but we got stuck on Liverpool for about 10-15 minutes. Okay, so the Wolves goalkeepers, they currently don't have a goalkeeper because they've obviously sold Patricio. They've got another Portuguese goalkeeper lined up. I assume he'll come in at 4-5, I would guess. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, what's his name is already. I mean, the rest of the back line's at 4-5. Semedo was who I was thinking of. He's 4-5. Nori signed a new contract. Big hopes for him to come in. Sace there at 4-5 as well. We know he's got massive goal threat as well. We'd had it under Nuno. Cody at 4-5 as well. Wolves they've taken a big chunk out of Wolves' prices, given that they were pretty poor last season. Wait and see, or
I think they're underpriced for me, mate, particularly in defence. They're a well-proven Premier League decent defence.
They're a mid-table Premier League team, right?
Yeah, and I think at 4-5, I think it's correctly priced, but I think you can get a bit of value there, especially with someone like Semedo who might have some attacking returns in him.
Having owned him for large periods of last season, he does not have attacking returns in him. I can confirm. I'd rather have Sace at 4-5, but I guess you've got the slight threat of rotation, whether the new manager is going to adopt the 4 at the back, 2 at the back. So I like Sace if he's nailed, but I think Semedo is the one if he's not.
Yeah, I think you can take your pick of the 4-5s, really. I think if there's someone you have a strong preference towards, I mean, Connor Cody's not going to get an attacking return, but at least he's nailed. It might be that Willy Bolly comes back into the team as well, because he was.
Yeah, I think he probably will actually. He'll
forgotten
probably
man last
Cody,
year,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So but they might play 5. So then suddenly there's a Sace spot as well, or like a Kilman spot, or Dendonka. They've got all sorts of options, but Semedo seems like he's going to play at wing back or full back, whichever formation they adopt. And to be honest, I don't think you can. I think there's worse options than just taking a punt on whoever the new goalkeeper is at 4-5, because they are a decent defence to me. So they don't score many, but they might keep some clean sheets. So you can do worse than a 4-5 goalie for Wolves, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know what the new manager's tactics are going to be and how he's going to set the side up, but. I know we've talked about every other team now. We're talking about the 4.5 options from like Newcastle, Watford, Norwich. I just don't know why you wouldn't just get a 4-5 from Wolves, given that they are better. Even with the slight uncertainty, they're a better side. They're more established in the league. They're solid if not spectacular. But I can't imagine they're going to have too many heavy defeats. Whereas I can see Norwich and Newcastle and Watford getting beaten soundly in quite a few games next season.
I'm gutted Johnny was injured, actually, mate. He was my real tip for the pre-season, and then he got injured in April, I think, didn't he? He's 4-5 as well. He would have been fantastic at that price, I think, because he does get attacking returns sometimes. So just a bit of a shame on that one. But
it's no wonder that they struggled last season with Johnny out and Doherty sold. They're two, the system relies so heavily on those two wing backs, and to lose both of those and the replacement's not really to be able to do what they used to do. It's no surprise that they struggled. So I think with the new manager in, new tactics, time to work on things, hopefully we'll see them, getting back up to good performances again.
Yeah, I think we'll get some information in pre-season on who's the nailed ones in the defence. I think that'll be really key for who we end up picking, I think, from Wolves for 4-5. So.
So in midfield, I mean, you've got Neto there at 6, had a good season last year. Podence is there at 5-5. He was doing all right until he got injured. And then Adama Traore at 6, who I love him, but he's a funny player, isn't he, Traore? You feel like he could be on the pitch versus 11 players and win the game, but also he's useless a lot of the time as well. It's Neto probably for me if I was going to pick a midfielder from Wolves. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure how his recovery is going, because obviously he's been injured for an awfully long time already. Yep. So he's probably not one to start with, I don't think. But yeah, maybe he comes into play when he's fully fit and raring to go later in the season. The others are no-goes for me. I think there's better options from other teams. So
then what about Jimenez at 7? I mean, I know, you're shaking your head. I love him. I want him to come back. I want him to, have got no ill effects from the horrible injury he had and be the player that we saw him be in the seasons beforehand. But my worry is he's not going to be the same player.
It's hard to know, isn't it? It's such a unique thing that's happened to him. I think, again, I hate to say it, but I think we just have to wait and see.
Thinking about it.
I was so sad when that happened, and obviously
So bad.
I'm a massive West Brom fan, but like it's not the sort of thing you want to see happen to anybody. To be honest, it was an horrific incident, totally accidental. But I think we have to see if he is the same player as before, don't we? I don't think there's any other way with that one because it's such a we've never seen anything like this really. So we need to see if he can get back to be the player that he used to be because he was a really top Premier League striker, to be honest.
Because it's not it's a completely different comparison, but I remember when Falcao signed for United, and there's all that excitement about him, you know, elite player, the goals he got and everything. But he was off the back of that really bad injury, wasn't he? And you could just see he wasn't going for stuff in the same way. He wasn't chasing stuff down. I just think there was that little bit in his mind which was thinking, and it's completely understandable, psychologically affected by the injury. And like Jimenez is so good in the air. That's always been his biggest like strength. And I just want, if there's going to be that little voice in his mind which just puts him off really challenging in the same way that he did before, I just wonder if that's going to bring his contribution down. I really hope it doesn't, but I think we've got to wait and just see what the effects are of that, because it was such a bad injury.
Yep, I agree.
Right, well that's it. We've been through every player and every team. Hopefully it's been useful for people. I've added timestamps to the last video, so if you want to go back and hear what we say about a team, you can. I'll add timestamps again to this one after we're done, so hopefully that'll help you kind of get through. But Josh, it's been great. We'll be doing one of these every week when the season starts as well, and probably a few pre-season matches. But thanks for joining me again, and good luck with all your tinkering.